everyone. Welcome
You
back.
there?
We have some cruisers back from, where did y'all go?
We went to Europe.
Europe. Oh, I could have carried your bags.
On a bus.
Anyway, it's good to have you here. We've got a couple of topics to cover, but let's go ahead and stand for the national anthem. Oh, I'm sorry. Pledge allegiance. Ed, would you like to sing the national anthem?
Oh, can you see by the dawn's early light, so proudly we hail, but the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous night, o'er the ramparts we watched, were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? A round of applause. Yes, wave on.
Okay, very good. Y'all have a seat. Thanks for leading that. That's great. Well, anyway, just kind of reviewed the last letter that I sent out, that Brian sent out for us. Just a reminder, this year they're looking at probably 14 to 18 named storms, 7 to 9 hurricanes, 2 to 4 could be major. Now, one interesting point they made, and this is according to West 2 News, is that the landfalling systems were weak, and they're projecting tropical intensity instead of hurricane strength winds. However, you never know about the weather. So again, as we come into this spring and summer season, just be mindful. June, I think, is traditionally, isn't that right, Brian, the start of the...
June 1st.
June
Yeah,
1st.
we're less than 1 month out.
Okay. So anyway, let's kind of keep on our toes, and we'll be doing some additional drills on that one. Tonight we're going to be talking about some soft tissue injuries, bones and splinting, that Roberta will be doing, and I'll be doing a quick overview on home safety checklist and avoiding falls. And then next month, I've been working with Girth. I can't remember his first name.
Nicholas Girth.
Nick Girth over in Lake County. They're going to be starting the program for Lake County for CERT training. It's kind of specialized, and it may not apply to a lot of people. However, we may have one or two that may want to get involved, and we'll probably be inviting communities like the Plantation and Highland Lakes and so forth, because there may be a combined effort that, and they had one in I think it was
Leesburg.
Yeah. Leesburg had the last one on that one. And then we're hopefully, now in the July time frame, we're meeting on the 11th because the 4th of July falls on the 4th. We're looking at weather patterns projection. It could be spectrum weather. Jeanette's kind of working with them. It's a kind of a tedious process. This is kind of like the government, works slow, but we've got a process in and trying to get that taken care of. Okay. Also, the t-shirts come in. If the size that you don't have is not there, let me know, and I'll do a reorder. I get about a 3-day turnaround from this outfit. And so anyway, I know there's some need for, I think, a 2X and some more extra large. I'll get those in. If you'll just either call me or send an email at larrycrook@yahoo, and then I'll go ahead and get that ordered for you, and I can hopefully do that tomorrow if you get your email in tonight. Cost of the t-shirts are about $20 a piece. Also, we still have quite a few of the disaster kits, trauma kits. They're also $20, and if you don't know much about that, just get a hold of me or Roberta, and we can talk about that. It's mainly focused not as a first aid kit, it's mainly for trauma. And the two main things are the tourniquet and the type of bandages that's referred to as a Israeli bandage. And those two items alone probably could make up a kit. You know, if you had a situation in a home or auto accident or something like that. Hopefully that'll never happen. Okay, Roberta, you want to come up?
While Roberta's coming up, about the forecast for the hurricanes and such for this coming season, the phenomenon on the West Coast, the Pacific Ocean, the El Nino and the La Nina, that's what really controls how these storms are going to present themselves to us. The bad news is while we may be getting the shear winds, which reduces hurricane strength somewhat, that same phenomenon kicks off because it creates shears. It kicks off more tornadic activity. So come the next season, you know, we're going through the season right now, beginning of the spring, where we've all seen all the tornadoes. You know, we had tornado threats here in Central Florida over the last week. That phenomenon out there could kick in the fall time, and we could see increased tornadic activity throughout the United States, probably including Florida. So while the hurricane situation is helped by that, the tornado situation becomes a little worse because of that. So just wanted to throw that in there. Also, just a reminder, Larry, next month we're going to try experimenting with shifting the meeting time for the monthly meeting. Only one meeting. We're going to give it a shot and see if it makes any difference in who attends and how many people attend. We're shifting it to 2 o'clock. So if you have your calendar like I do set up just as a regular reminder every month, you might want to go and edit that one to remind you that it starts at 2 instead of 6:30. I think that's it.
I'm new to Florida, 3.5 years, and I've been in couple of storms last year. I guess you call it spin-offs of hurricanes. Being from Texas, the thing that scares me more is a tornado. I've been in 2, and they're kind of frightening. And my daughter was up in the one in Moore, Oklahoma, when that happened. I think it's 2016. And that was devastating. It looked like a war zone. We went up to help clean up that area after the aftermath of that. So Brian's got a good point. We may take a lot of things for granted, but just be mindful. Tornado warnings, if you hear, I don't know whether they even have sirens out here.
I don't think so. The
No.
alerts on our cell phones are the #1 way of communicating, other than your weather radio in your house.
And our cell phones are
Yeah,
That's
I mean,
what I'm saying,
we
cell
had them in
phones.
Fort Worth, and I mean, you could, when they went off, you knew what was coming, so. But anyway, go ahead.
like that.
Hello.
Hello.
First of all, I'd like to know, is there a, I forgot his name. Oh, well, I'll ask later. Okay. First we're going to talk about is the musculoskeletal injuries, which includes the body's bones, joints, and muscles. And I'm going to talk just about the first aid for it, because we all pretty much know when we see a victim and they're complaining, you can make a pretty good guess. It could be a bone in the arm or a bone in the leg or a joint. Okay? So, what I want to say is joints connect bones. So you have 2 bones in a joint. I don't know if you realize that or know that or not. I could be repeating. But otherwise your bones are bones, but the joints are where there's bone on bone with cushioning between your cartilage. So that's the difference between that. Now I'm going to go right into the first aid for these injuries. And bones, joints, and muscles are basically treated pretty much the same way if there's an injury. So, of course, first you have to do is when you come upon a victim is do the assessment. and figure out if they can tell you what's wrong. Does their arm hurt? Do their fingers hurt? I learned today that you can even splint teeth. But anyway, that's a side thing. But it's all pretty much the same for everything. So first you assess what the problem probably is, and if the person's awake, then and cognizant, then you can ask them. Another way to tell is if a person has, for instance, a broken arm, they will try to protect the area that's damaged. So that's something you could look at too and notice if the person's protecting an area. Especially if it's a child, they may not want to talk to you. And so these, I'm going to give you 3 letters we always have these things. R-I-C-E. It's called rice.
That'd be 4 letters.
Did I say 3? Oh, well. Oh, well.
You're just checking to see if we're paying attention.
Thanks, boss. Okay, so R-I-C-E, and that stands for R is rest. So when you come across a person and you've established what the injury is, then you try to calm the patient down and position the body in as comfortable a position as you can for the person without moving the limb. Just give them some kind of support. If they're holding their arm or something, then you want to just maybe help them hold it a little bit until they're fairly comfortable, or you can put a pillow under it, if something, or a towel or a blanket. The same thing with a leg, but so that it isn't stressed. You want to avoid the stress. Okay, then you immobilize, which I just said, as necessary. So you try to immobilize the area, bone, joint, muscle. Don't have to apply anything, just get them in a position where they're not moving it. Then you apply, C is for cold, you're applying an ice pack, keeping a towel between the limb and the ice bag or the ice itself. A good way of doing that is to have a towel or even a plastic bag if you're out in the backcountry somewhere. Just something that will cushion and not let the cold damage the tissue around the broken bone. We'll assume it's a bone. And then elevate and raise the limb if it's possible. You keep it elevated. Now, you got to look at the injury also, and you got to check for blood circulation in the extremities. If you have a bone, a person has a bone broken in the extremities, you should check their nail beds to see if they're turning blue, because then they may not be getting any blood supply. There could be an obstruction. So you have to be aware of that. Or a discoloration, or a swelling, or lack of feeling. Usually that would be below the break, or below the damaged part. And you also have to look for an open fracture where the bone is exposed. So that's important. Then when you have an open fracture, then you have to check to see if it's an arterial bleed or not. If that bone's coming up through the skin, if there's an arterial bleed, well, then you have to treat it as if it was a bleed.
A bleed out.
Or, well, bleed out, yeah, as if it was a bleed, yeah, heavy arterial bleed. You have to get pressure on it somehow to stop that arterial blood flow. Because you could have a broken bone in an accident, and it could go right up and nick an artery. We don't know.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I come upon somebody, my wife is a good example. She fell down, broke her arm, compound fracture, it's sticking out. I wasn't there when it happened. Of course, there was bleeding. It wasn't arterial because I heard nothing about,
Right.
any type of tourniquet.
It was
Would
probably a venous bleed.
Probably. So would a tourniquet be maybe the only appropriate thing? Because you can't put pressure on where that bone is sticking out, right?
Yeah, but according to what I've read, they don't particularly want you to use a tourniquet unless it's above the wound and the person's bleeding out. Now, maybe Carl might know more about that than I would, but I would say if a person's looking like they're hemorrhaging and they're bleeding out, well, then you're going to have to tourniquet it
Yeah, it's a last resort.
as a last resort.
How would you handle it, Carl, if she's arterial bleeding, let's say here?
Arterial grade,
Above,
It's coming out fast.
above.
you go.
Well, I realize above would be a tourniquet. I'm asking Carl, would you be putting pressure on that wound where the bone is sticking out?
Might have to.
The bone is sticking out above. You find a pressure point, whether it be the brachial artery up under the arm to slow down the blood, or around the elbow. There's another spot right in here where you can apply direct pressure. You don't have time to fool around too much. If it's an arterial bleed, you see it pumping, you want to stop it as soon as possible. You don't want to fool around with something like that.
Right.
So if it comes down to it, yes, you would go in the tourniquet, but that's last resort. You try, you see what's happening, and if you've got some experience, you'll know right away. You got to tourniquet this thing because it's not going to stop on direct pressure, but you still try. Last resort is tourniquet.
Thank you.
Any questions on that from anybody else? Okay, so you treat it as an arterial bleed, I would say. Then you go back to your bleeding. Okay, do not use an elastic bandage because an elastic bandage can constrict. And anyway, they don't want you to use an elastic bandage to wrap on a splint or anything like that. Any reason, big reason for that, Carl?
Same thing as a tourniquet.
Tourniquet, right.
You're cutting down.
It'll just cut it. Yeah, and if you don't have an arterial bleed and you don't need a tourniquet, you don't need an elastic bandage. Okay? And you have to check to see if the person can, if it's a lower limb, lower extremity, whether they can bear weight on it or not. Okay? If you think you're going to have to use a splint, and it depends on what your situation is, okay, you have to use discretion. Just because you come across somebody with a broken arm, you don't have, I don't know how to say this. Use discretion because you should be calling 911. If not, the only time you don't call 911, or you don't have to, is if there's somebody's got a broken toe or a broken finger or something and they need to go to the doctors and the doctor, but it's not an emergency. But a broken arm, shoulder, joint, out of whack, whatever, you have to call 911. And then if 911 is only a few minutes away, don't start splinting. Let the EMTs or the paramedics or whoever, if they feel they should splint, or let the medical personnel that can do it, that are trained for that, to do it. All you do is keep the person comfortable, keep the limb elevated, and you immobilize it if necessary. I know when my neighbor had broken her ankle, I said, "Where are your peas in your freezer?" I said, "We got a bag of peas," and I took a washcloth and put a washcloth between the peas and the skin, because you don't want to burn the skin, cause frostbite. All right, so you elevate, you immobilize, and you try to calm the patient and rest. That's the most you can do for the person until 911 gets there. Okay, you don't have to splint. Now, in cases where you do have to splint, are there any questions about this, first of all? This is just the first aid. Yes,
Okay, sorry.
that's all right.
We're talking about, look at the injury to locate any obvious injury, call 911 if blood circulation in extremities, and you go on to say nail beds turn blue, discoloration. What are you supposed to do if they have blood circulation not happening? How can you help them?
Call 911. That's
That's
number
all we
one.
got. That's
You-
all we got, right? Nothing
Well,
else.
you can elevate the limb if you can. Okay, if there's,
Wouldn't that reduce
well,
circulation?
Yes and no. That would slow down the swelling, which is probably reducing the blood flow anyway. I,
Your body has an automatic adjustment to it. If there's a heavy bleed, let's just say it's not an arterial bleed, your veins and arteries will shut down to that area. Okay, so what you have to do is just keep in mind that it's blood flow first. If you have an arterial bleed and you're not getting any blood flow to the hand, you can't worry about that.
you can't worry about it, right?
You know, that's not the problem. The problem is stop the blood. One other way to check is when you're looking at the nail beds, if you press on your nail bed, all right, you should have recovery of the color within 2 to 3 seconds. Okay, if you don't, that's telling you that
There's no blood flow
no blood flow
to that area, for whatever reason.
for whatever reason, but you want to stop blood flow.
So it could be swelling, it could be an obstruction, it could be a bleed. That's the time to call 911 when these things
Yeah, you can
are
have
apparent.
You can have you can have a bone that's pressing against an artery that's fractured. It's not broken, a full break, a spiral fracture. What it does, it could be pushing against an artery, which would cut down on circulation. That's not your problem. All you can do is do what you can do at that point. You're not an x-ray machine. You don't know how bad it is or where it is, so you don't go moving stuff around. You just make them comfortable and hold it. The arm especially, fracture the wrist. You see a lot of that, bike riders, you know, they go off and they give you the fourth configuration.
Basically keep it immobile.
Immobile, yeah.
That's immobility is the
whatever you
big
need.
thing, to keep the extremity immobile. Okay, and splinting to me, unless you really know what you're doing, sometimes you could do more harm than good.
Yes.
And that's why you want to call 911. With that, we're going to show a little ditty on splinting. And the reason why I'm doing this is to show that if you were ever in a situation, it gives you the pros and cons of splinting. They use manufactured splints, so you may not have that, okay? But it'll give you an idea of how to splint and what you need to do if you have to. You may not have anything but a couple of boards, but anyway, we'll talk about it afterwards if you have any questions. Thank you, Larry.
So what is a splint and why would you use one? A splint is an object that's used to hold an extremity stable in a traumatic event where you suspect an underlying orthopedic injury, whether that's a fracture or a dislocation of a joint. Splints will greatly reduce the pain of the patient, but they'll also help preventing any further orthopedic injury or soft tissue injury caused by the bone ends moving around under the skin. So in general, splinting is an objective-based
Can you get that louder?
Practice. So when you're splinting, say a long bone fracture, so your radius, ulna, humerus, any of your fingers, your femurs, or your tibia and fibula, you're going to have to immobilize the joint above and below. Now with the joint, such as your wrist, elbow, knees, ankles, you're going to have to immobilize the long bone above and below. This is a global objective for splinting. Therefore, you can splint with almost anything on the market, and you can even improvise your own splints. In front of you, I've got a couple different tools used in splinting, although we'll talk about these all later. So, what are the signs and symptoms of an orthopedic injury? First and foremost, it's going to be pain. Pain at the site. In a long bone fracture, they're usually going to be able to point exactly on their arm or leg where it hurts the most. Beyond that, you've got severe bruising, any kind of false joint where the arm's bending somewhere it shouldn't bend, leg, so on and so forth. Reduced movement distal to that injury, so reduced movement past that injury, it hurts to move their hand. An open fracture where you actually see bone ends, that's one of the only times you can definitively diagnose a fracture in the field. And then beyond that, mainly the diagnosis, the official diagnosis is going to have to be made in the hospital after imaging. Crepitus is another one, if you hear like grinding in there, and then if the patient tells you that they felt a snap, crackle, or pop in their arm or leg when the event happened, that's a sign that might lead you to believe there may be an underlying fracture. So I want to walk you through really quick the process of splinting and how that's going to be done. Now for this demonstration, I'm going to use a SAM splint simply because that's a pretty common splint, and if you don't want to watch to the end, I'll give it away. This is what I'm going to recommend you carry in your pack with you just because it is so versatile. That being said, the principles of applying this splint apply to any kind of splint, including a makeshift one that you're making in the middle of nowhere if you don't have any supplies on you. So the first step in splinting is you're going to have to check the patient's circulation, motion, and sensation distal to that injury. So on the hand, you're going to want to pinch the finger and see if there's a capillary refill. See if the finger blanches and comes back within about 2 seconds as normal. That can be affected if it's really cold or hot outside, but generally 2 seconds is what we're looking for. Additionally, you're going to want to see if there's any decreased motion in that extremity. So can they move their hand? And then third, can they feel you touching specific fingers? Do they have numbness? If they don't have good CMS circulation, motion, and sensation, that means that they're at risk for losing that extremity. It's a potential loss of a limb because there's decreased circulation or nerve innervation at that point. But moving on, we'll say that their CMS is intact. We're going to want to have either the patient or our partner stabilize that injury as best we can, act as a makeshift splint until we can get ours applied. If the patient's doing it, just have them hold it however is comfortable and have them try not to move it as much as possible, simply to reduce any further movement of that and any damage before we can apply that splint. If your partner's doing it, have them hold it in the position of comfort for the patient, but have them hold it steady. The third step is you're going to want to size the splint to the uninjured extremity. So you don't want to be sizing it on the injured extremity necessarily, because you might have to actually kind of apply it to the uninjured extremity to mold it to how it has to fit. And then you want to move that over to the extremity you're actually going to want to splint. With good communication with either the patient or your partner, and most of the time both of them, you're going to want to take over that stabilization they were holding and put the splint under or over the injury to hold that steady. Once that's applied, you're going to take something like roller gauze, acrylics, or Coban, and then wrap that splint onto their arm. As you wrap it, remember you're wanting to reduce the motion if it's a long bone of the joint above and below, and if it's a joint, the long bone above and below. In this example, notice how the sling is actually the thing that's immobilizing the elbow and not the splint itself. Once the splint's applied, you're going to want to recheck the patient's CMS, circulation, motion, sensation, and if the patient had good CMS going into the splinting, and now they have reduced CMS after the splint, you're going to have to go back to your splint and reassess it to make sure nothing's too tight, because at some point in that, you actually reduce their circulation or innervation, and you need to figure out how to correct that. A lot of times that's going to mean taking off the splint and reapplying it in a different manner. Once the splint's applied, you're going to want to seek definitive care as quickly as possible. Although you're preventing it from doing further damage, this isn't something that you can go home with the splint and think it's going to heal up on its own. It will heal, but it's going to heal in a way that might reduce mobility down the road or potentially vasculature. So this is something you definitely need to seek definitive care after the incident. So what kind of splint should you carry? How should you carry it? And what do I have in front of me? So first we have the kinds of splint that we carry on our ambulance. This is a fast splint. It's a vacuum splint that you pump out the air, and it actually hardens around the extremity to keep it from moving. It is a great splint. However, you're going to see right here, it's pretty big, pretty bulky. This comes with a huge pump, and it comes with a duffel bag that needs to be stored in one of our cabinets on our ambulance. This is not a good option for a civilian to go out and buy, and they're relatively...
Don't click that one. You might try just pause and then unpause it.
next option, and what I would recommend carrying, is a SAM splint. This is a very versatile splint that can be used on any extremity and can fold down into a pretty compact space. I carry this on my third line gear. I also carry this in my car kit and my motorcycle first aid kit, just in case you come across somebody and need to apply it. This is a great thing to carry in your backpacking stuff, because if somebody gets an injury back in the wilderness, you're going to have to be able to splint their extremity wherever it might be and get them to a position of comfort where they're actually able to hike out on their own, and potentially saving you from having to be airlifted or have a search and rescue party come after you. If you're going to carry a SAM splint though, you need a couple other things. You need either roller gauze, acrylics, or Coban, something that you're going to be able to wrap around the extremity and prevent that from moving around and secure this splint to the body. The other thing you should have is a triangular bandage, or a cravat, as some people call it. This is going to allow you to create a sling for that patient and potentially a swath to hold it in close to their body. This is an important part of splinting an extremity, especially the wrist, because generally a SAM splint's not going to immobilize the elbow, and you're going to have a way to immobilize that joint above and hold it close to the body so that it's not moving around anymore. If you don't feel like you can fit a splint in your pack, although I still recommend using the SAM, you can always improvise a splint. Like I said, it's an objective-based activity, so if you find a stick and you're able to get all the burrs off it, apply it that way. If you're able to use maybe a magazine to roll around the arm, whatever it may be, you can improvise a splint with a pretty high level of effectiveness. That being said, a commercial product like the SAM is going to be more comfortable for that patient, and it's going to be able to be applied a little bit quicker than, say, tying a stick around their arm. Thanks for watching, guys, and remember that this is not medical training. I would strongly advise you go out and get some hands-on practice with an instructor in splinting and immobilization through either a first aid course, or if you have the time and resources, through an EMT course. I'll be releasing videos similar to this every week, so if you're interested, subscribe, and I will see you next week.
Okay, any questions? Brian?
No, you did good.
So, the basic thing is immobilize, immobilize, immobilize. If you're not having a bleed, an arterial bleed, whatever. Okay, but that's the biggest thing. It's whether it's the leg, whether it's the knee, a joint you always immobilize, or if you have to splint, but above and below the joint, both. You have to keep both long bones splinted, immovable. Okay? All right. Yep.
Thank you, Roberta. Thank you.
The movies you can get on YouTube, if anybody's.
Yeah, that's a good
interested.
series. It's the same guy, I think, well, one of them that did some of the other things that we trained on. So it's a good series. I'm going to go through some PowerPoint slides. I'm going to talk to you. Then I'm going to show you a 5-minute video. The video goes very fast, faster than I think I could even listen, being from Texas. So the first thing about falls, 1 in 5 falls can cause a serious injury. Now, since I've been 3.5 years in Florida, between my wife and myself, we've had 5 incidents. Okay, nothing got broken, but it sure was sore. She actually fell out of a bathtub, and we didn't have the support. So afterwards, we were able to get the braces and the bars and so forth. But she was very fortunate; didn't break anything. And then sometimes you can get across something that may be as simple as a rug, a throw rug, or something like that, or a dog. I tripped over my dog. So you're not looking at things. So just be mindful of your surroundings and your environment when you're dealing with that. There's over 800,000 patients a year are hospitalized because of a fall injury. So anything you can do to visually inspect and deal in your home or where you're at. The one fall I did have that scraped me was at Disney Springs. Some of those ramps they have, they're kind of graded and they're rough. Well, I just was dragging my tennis shoe, and next thing I was falling down. Now, luckily, I didn't use my hands. I did roll, and my shoulder. Maybe that's because I was airborne. You learn a lot of tricks, dealing with that kind of stuff. But just be mindful, and then hip injuries, about 300,000 a year for seniors, just for things that happen. So just be very mindful of that. Okay, what conditions make you more likely to fall? I'll just go over these briefly. One is your actually weakness. Sometimes we get old, and we don't think we're old. But sometimes you get around and you start moving, and things don't work as well as they did back when you were 20 and 30 years old. So just kind of be mindful of what you think up here and what the rest of your body is telling you. Sometimes there's supplements that maybe, check with your doctor, maybe vitamin D and other type of supplements, calcium, so forth. Osteoporosis, I know that can be a problem. And just be mindful of your medical conditions. Go see your doctors and just get evaluated, and make sure you do have the type of chemistry in your body that can minimize that if you do fall. Difficulty walking and keeping your balance. Right now, my wife is having problems. I have to kind of hold on to her when we're walking because she keeps wanting to go lean forward. And I don't know what, maybe it's the type of shoes. She needs to go to a podiatrist or something like that, but that just happened this year. And it's just, I notice her when she's walking, same thing. Just be mindful of your partner and things that you're doing because of walking and balance, inner ear, so forth, can make an effect on how you operate. Very be mindful of things like sedatives and antidepressants. Even some over-the-counter medications can cause you some difficulties. Vision problems. I think the first time I realized I needed glasses, I was in Fort Worth, and I had to get out of the car to read the sign. I said, that's it. I need to go to the doctor. So, yeah, it helped quite a bit, and I guess I was probably about 25, 26 years old at that time, so I needed glasses. So, but vision problems can, sometimes the transition on bifocals, if you're not mindful, what your brain is telling your body could get you just off a hair. And again, just be very mindful of home hazards. Like we got area rugs, we have tile in our home, but we do have an area rug under our beds, and then one in the living room. Now, so far that hasn't been an issue, but it does raise the elevation of that rug. And then also power cords. Just be mindful if you have to run a cord, I don't care if it's that far from a rug to a wall, you can go to the hardware stores or Ace or something like that and get those type of things that you can cut and lay down and make sure that doesn't happen. Like I say, pets can be a problem too. So. You also might look at your lighting. Now we've pretty well gone to LEDs, and we go with the brighter color as far as being at daylight, and the brighter bulbs. Same thing in a garage. Sometimes you may have one light. We do have a bar light. We did change some lighting in our house in the kitchen to an LED. Made a big difference in perspective on what you can see. Also things like your showers, tubs, toilet, so forth. Just be mindful. A lot of people put rugs so they don't get their tootsies cold or whatever. So be mindful though. It's very easy to get you trip on those type of things too. I would also, if you're living home alone, keep current phone list of family and friends, and you might even institute some type of daily call. Now, we did that with my sister. She did fall. She passed away last year as a result of 2 falls. And, but we'd always check on her every day because she was living at home in Little Rock, Arkansas. Eventually, we got her moved to Tennessee, close to her son. And, but even with the treatment she had, she actually fell out of a nursing home off the bed. And that was probably the eventually downturn for her demise. So, consider possibly medical or, yeah, question.
I think the Lake County Sheriff's Department has a call.
Yes, I'll get to that. You're right.
That's every morning, yeah.
Let me go ahead. The Lake County Sheriff's Office has a safety lockbox program. It's intended to provide police, fire, and emergency medical services access to your residence in the event of an emergency when you are unable to open the door. Initial cost is $10. What it is very similar to the real estate people that can go and they can, I don't know how it works with Lake County, but it's easy for them to get in without having to break a door down or something like that. And also, families not close by, adopt a buddy system. I mean, Ed, you're familiar with buddy systems in the military and the importance of that, to have one on your left and right and be able to help in case of situations that change. So if you know of someone, it doesn't hurt, maybe it's a neighbor, just, make a phone call sometimes. Same thing, if your spouse is out on a trip sometimes, maybe have someone call, just check on periodically. Because, again, you don't know what could happen in a situation, and time can very be important in that.
Larry, I'm not sure that answers what Carolyn was saying, and I want to hand her a microphone so we can all hear this one. Can you describe what you're talking about?
Well, I'm pretty sure I'm correct that Lake County Sheriff's Department has a call system. And you get registered with it, and then you call them in the morning or at a certain time. You call them in and say, yes, I'm okay, and then that's fine. But if you don't call, they will check on you.
Okay.
It's a service. I don't think you have to pay for it.
No, it's a part, and you get that training, yes, you get that training when you go through the Lake County Sheriff Office, the program.
Thank you very much for that. I didn't know they had that
Thank you.
program.
It's called the Senior Watch Program.
Thank you.
And to finish that story,
I know you don't need it, but use it anyway.
as Carolyn said, if you don't call in, then they will try to reach you. And if they can't, they send a deputy to your house.
Thank you, Ed.
Okay, I'll get some
Thank
information
you,
on
Larry.
the next letter that goes out.
Thank you,
Good
Carolyn.
point. So the lockbox is available, and apparently this call system works great too. Okay, let me go ahead and play the video real quick. It's about 5 minutes. It goes pretty quick, but it has some very good information on that. Now, the other things we didn't really talk about, and I think it's for another time and so forth, is when we make decisions, when you get phone calls or scams and so forth, just be mindful. They're going to talk about that just real briefly, but that's something that I get almost every day. If something, something says your Amazon account has been suspended. I mean, it's just amazing. But I guess over a period of time, some people fall for that. You need to verify your Social Security number. So.
Billions of dollars a year are scammed from senior citizens. FYI, billions with a B.
With a growing number of older adults living independently, it's increasingly important to make sure that they are safe at home. If you're an older adult
Too loud.
living on your own or care for an older person living alone, here's what you need to do to stay safe. Protect against abuse. Keep your windows and doors locked at all times. Never let a stranger into your home when you are there alone. Talk over offers made by telephone salespeople with a friend or family member. Do not share your personal information such as social security number, credit card or bank information, or account passwords with people you don't know who contact you. Always ask for written information about any offers, prizes, or charities and wait to respond until you have reviewed the information thoroughly. Do not let yourself be pressured into making purchases, signing contracts, or making donations. It is never rude to wait and discuss the plans with a family member or friend. Keep emergency numbers handy. Always keep a list of emergency numbers by each phone. Write this information in large enough print that you can read it easily if you are in a hurry or frightened. Be sure to list numbers for 911, poison control, family member or friend to call in case of emergency, and your doctor's office. Prevent falls. If you have fallen or are scared of falling, think about buying a special alarm that you wear as a bracelet or necklace with automatic fall detection. That way, if you fall and pass out, it will automatically alarm and get help for you. Stop using step stools or ladders. Do not rush to answer the phone or the door. If you have a cane or a walker, use it at all times instead of holding onto walls and furniture. Ask your doctor if you will benefit from physical therapy for balance and strength training and fall recovery techniques. Safety-proof your home. Make sure all hallways, stairs, and baths are well lit and clear of objects such as books or shoes. Use rails and banisters in going up and down the stairs. Remove throw rugs. Protect against fire and related dangers. If there is a fire in your home, don't try to put it out. Leave and call 911. Know at least 2 ways to get out of your apartment or home. Replace appliances that have fraying or damaged electrical cords. Don't put too many electric cords into one socket or extension cord. Install a smoke detector and replace the battery twice a year. Never smoke in bed or leave candles burning, even for a short time in an empty room. Make sure heaters are at least 3 feet from anything that can burn, such as curtains, beddings, or furniture. Turn off space heaters when you leave the room. Set the thermostat on the water heater no higher than 100 to prevent scalding. Have grab bars installed. Put rubber mats in the bathtub to prevent slipping. If you are having a hard time getting in and out of your tub or on and off the toilet, ask your doctor to help you get a special tub chair or bench or a raised toilet seat. Prevent poisoning. For carbon monoxide, never try to heat your home with your stove, oven, or grill since this can give off carbon monoxide, a deadly gas that you cannot see or smell. Make sure there is a carbon monoxide detector near all bedrooms and be sure to test and replace the battery twice a year. Ask your pharmacist to put large print labels on your medications to make them easier to read. Bring all of your pill bottles with you to your doctor appointments so he or she can look at them and make sure you're taking them correctly. Never mix bleach, ammonia, or all the cleaning liquids together. Cleaning liquids can create deadly gases. Thank you for listening. Please click the like button, hit subscribe.
I know that was pretty fast, but maybe you picked up some good pointers out of that. So, any other questions? Otherwise, we're dismissed. Oh, by the way, if one of the sizes of your T-shirt wasn't there, if you'll email me, Larry Crook at Yahoo, and let me know what you need, I get about a 3-day turnaround on these shirts because of the quantities we've purchased. So, any other questions?
I have something I want to add to fall. Oh, can't hear me? Ha! Thank you. I was told this quite some time ago, and it actually saved me from getting broken bone. If you find you're falling, and you've tripped over something, you think, here I go. Don't try to brace it, go limp. I don't know if anyone's ever told you that, but the worst thing you can do is put out your arm because you'll break the arm or the wrist or something. So it's just keep it in your head because it's not an instinct, not a natural instinct.
Yeah, sometimes it's almost like, you want to do that, but like I say, when I did that fall in Disney Springs, I did turn and hit the bulk of on my shoulder. It was sore, but I didn't break anything. Somebody else had a question?
I just want to know, is Jim McDonald here?
No, he's not.
I'm just looking for Jim McDonald. I'd like to get him set up with his emergency
Okay.
kits.
Okay, sounds good.
If anybody knows him.
I do. I'll get a hold of him.
I'll see him tomorrow, Pachi.
Anything else? thank you for coming tonight. Hope it was a beneficial meeting.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.